when we were backstage, we were talking about billions of dollars per Bitcoin. How's this happen? When does it happen? You reckon it's going to happen sooner rather than later?
I think it's going to happen much sooner than we think. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, once once the FOMO sets in, once people realize that this is the only form of real money that you can actually own, the one that no one can manipulate, and use against you. Um, all money from all assets around the world are going to move from wherever they are and into Bitcoin, and this is going to parabolically send the price to where we've never seen it before. I mean, considering the finite supply, it's simple math. So it won't take long to make the numbers get really, really big, really, really fast.
Yep. So potentially this cycle, obviously we've got the BlackRock Bitcoin ETF that is pretty much a certainty at this stage, I dare say. Is this going to lead to mass adoption? And what are your thoughts on the BlackRock Bitcoin ETF? Good or bad and different?
BlackRock ETF is definitely very bullish for Bitcoin because it's going to give many, many folks the confidence to invest in it. A lot of folks, they're unsure about what Bitcoin is. They're afraid of the tech. They don't understand the tech. So now they have this, prominent figure, Larry Fink, that's essentially telling them, it's all good, guys. We can go into this. It's the right thing to do. And they're just going to follow. So just because you're a high net worth individual doesn't mean you have the self-confidence, you have the conviction, you have the the mindset to do your own research. Sometimes you just need to follow the lead of someone else, and that's what the Bitcoin ETF is going to do. It's going to bring Bitcoin awareness to a lot of folks with a lot of money that are going to dive right into it.
Yep. Yeah, I was talking to somebody at a party or a gathering 2 weeks ago, and fairly high net worth individuals talking about Bitcoin and stuff, and they thought it was a scam, talked about inflation. And then I said, BlackRock's launching an ETF. They're like, oh, what's the ticker symbol? I'll buy some. And they were dead set against it until I mentioned BlackRock. As soon as they heard, I said, it's not out now. You can buy it. You can hold it in self-custody. No. I'll wait for the BlackRock ETF. So my question for you, Tony, is once this comes out, do you think people hop into the ETF first, they'll get educated, they'll take it into self-custody, or it's going to be a black hole that's going to suck up whatever Bitcoin is remain, people are going to stay in that ETF?
Well, look, I mean, there's a lot of folks that I think are going to remain in the ETF simply because they don't want to, take the time to learn self-custody, or maybe they don't believe it. Those, in my opinion, are usually going to be folks of an older age group. The younger folks, are going to dive deep into this thing and understand what it's about. And they're going to, do their own research, talk to friends, talk to others that are holding it, and they're going to follow those that are leading by example. Okay, so when you meet a lot of high net worth individuals now that are holding Bitcoin in self-custody, well, if those that are not holding in self-custody, they're going to start asking questions. And they're sort of going to imitate, what the others are doing, considering they're seeing good things come out of it. So maybe initially not, but eventually a lot more folks will be, going for Bitcoin self-custody. Now, how expensive that's going to be, once the ETF is approved and the price has already gone parabolic, that's a whole different ballgame. I mean, most individuals will likely be, priced out of Bitcoin when things, start going crazy. But that's a whole different conversation. Initially, no, I don't think, the crowd that's going into the ETF will even, consider self-custody at all, unfortunately. But, eventually a lot more will.
Yep. So obviously over like the last year and a half, we've seen Operation Choke Point 2.0. It's been massive here in Australia, especially in the US as well. Once the CTF is live, is people still going to be able to buy Bitcoin and take it into self-custody, or those on and off ramps to be able to take self-custody are going to be totally extinct, and they want to funnel people strictly into that ETF so that the government, BlackRock, can have control more so over Bitcoin or the amount of Bitcoin?
Yeah, that's very likely what's going to happen. I mean, it's already starting to happen. In the US, a lot of the on and off ramps, are disappearing. There are very limited places where you can actually, buy Bitcoin. And I suspect, once the ETF gets approved, maybe all of them get, canceled, or you're only left with a very limited amount of them. Needless to say, doing all of this does nothing bad for Bitcoin other than increase the demand for it. It's because of human nature. You always want what you can't have, and you always start asking questions as to how to get it. When the price starts going parabolic, there's a million ways to get Bitcoin. You can close all the on and off ramps, whichever way you see fit. People will always find ways to transact. Bitcoin is peer to peer. You cannot stop it. No matter what you try, no matter what you do, it's unstoppable. And there's always going to be a way, maybe an expensive way at that point, but there's always going to be a way to buy Bitcoin for those that really want it.
Yeah. So say BlackRock's price and then spot Bitcoin KYC price. On the topic of KYC versus non-KYC, what are your thoughts? Should you have KYC only or non-KYC or a little mix of both? What are your thoughts in regards to that?
Well, that KYC and no KYC really comes down to your concept of privacy and whether you're a big proponent of it, whether you care about it, or you just you take a whatever approach. KYC is supposed to be for your protection and all that stuff. It has nothing to do with any of your protection. KYC was put into place to ensure the surveillance and control of the monetary system. It has zero to do with anyone's protection. The problem with KYC when it comes to an asset like Bitcoin, especially that we've never had it, is that Bitcoin has such a finite supply that the value of this asset is going to be unlike anything we've ever seen. So with KYC, there is a record of every individual that's purchased it. And when things go nuts, those that don't have it, and may want to attempt to steal it, like the rate of theft from those that don't have it and want it is going to go up with the price and value of Bitcoin. So they're not going to come after individuals with a hammer. What they're going to do, the more intelligent and more efficient way to do, is they're going to go after institutions that likely hold a database of everyone that owns it, because it's a much easier target. And if such institutions get hacked, then your name is on that database. And you potentially have a very big problem now, because a very bright someone, knows that you own X amount, and they know exactly where to find you. So that's where the dangers of KYC, specifically to Bitcoin, becomes a problem. No KYC, you don't have any of these issues. You're buying it peer-to-peer. There's many ways to transact. You hold them in a separate wallet. That's the key. You don't want to, unless you're very disciplined in labeling all your transactions, you absolutely want to keep them segregated just to be safe. I'm a big believer that you should have a portion of no KYC Bitcoin just for your own personal safety at some point in time.
Yep. And what about people that have KYC? They now want to make it non-KYC. They want to remove that link between themselves and the exchange or whatever they bought it through. What's some of the ways people can do it? We don't need to go high level, but maybe just a low level overview.
Sure. Well, there's only one way to really get rid of the KYC completely, and that's to sell back whatever KYC coins you have back to the exact same place you bought it from, and then use those funds to buy no KYC Bitcoin. Most folks cannot do this simply because they bought Bitcoin at very different price points. It just doesn't make financial sense. So what you could do at that point is engage in what's called as a coin join. And basically what that does is that it mixes your coins, with other transactions, and it breaks the heuristics between your coins going forward. So essentially think of it as like taking money out of an ATM. The bank knows you withdrew whatever you took out, but has no idea what you spent it on. The coin join essentially does the same thing to the Bitcoin. They know you own X amount, but then what happened to it, nobody knows. So if you say you lost it at sea, no one can prove that you didn't lose it at sea, because it's no longer linked to you anyhow. That's a very popular option. That's part of the Bitcoin ecosystem. A lot of people are encouraged to use it. A lot of people are using it, obviously, for that purpose, to protect themselves, down the road.
Yeah, we saw like an action suit against Tornado Cash for mixing coins. people that use CoinJoin and those Bitcoins, are they going to be labeled or flagged? Is there any chance of that going into the future? And then are there any ways to be able to get around that? You know, if we're to look forward into the future, obviously hindsight's easier, but what would be your guess?
Yeah, obviously, there's always going to be narratives pushed to discourage people from such activities. I mean, it's already happening. Um, what they can do is essentially scare you into thinking, that this is going to be illegal, or it's very bad and you're funding terrorism and all that stuff. This is all nonsense. Some folks
Yeah,
are going to believe it. Some folks are going to believe it, unfortunately, and do nothing. But once you understand the technology, you very quickly realize that there's nothing anyone can do to stop this. You want to do this, there's a million ways to get involved, and there's a million ways to remain safe and untouched when you get involved. So I'm not really concerned about this. As far as I'm concerned, these are all scare tactics. Depending where you live, if you live in a jurisdiction, where you're always dealing with headaches, with regards to government overreach and all that stuff, then
planet
the
Earth.
best thing to do, yeah, well, the best thing to do is just leave. I mean, and ideally leave before things get exponentially bad, because I mean, you don't know what can happen. If they prevent you from leaving, let's say they close the airports again, or come up with some sort of nonsense that restricts you from getting on a plane, then what are you going to do? So
Yeah,
while technologically there's no way to stop this, they can make your life, a living nightmare in other ways, at least in the short term. Um, and you really don't want to, find yourself in a position to have to deal with such nonsense. So, sort of like prevention before, before it happens is the way I like to proceed.
yeah. So I'd be like optimistically cautious in a way when you go forward and interact
Yeah.
with Bitcoin, I guess. One of the things we're talking about, and I don't know how far you want to go into it, but obviously Lebanon, when that happened, a lot of people had pretty much all their money shut down from them. Do you reckon we're going to see more and more of this around the world? And is Bitcoin a solution, or is it just Bitcoiners that believe it's a solution?
No, I believe what happened in Lebanon is absolutely going to manifest itself in every city, everywhere. I mean, it's the nature of fiat currencies. The biggest ones are going to take the longest, to get hit, but eventually they're all going down to zero. And when that happens, this is going to bring a wave of destruction unlike anyone's ever seen. I've witnessed it in Lebanon, and I can tell you, from a personal experience, it is much worse than you can possibly imagine. To live your entire life and have your entire life savings completely swiped from under you is not something many folks are able to recover from. Young individuals, those that are strong enough to get back on their feet, usually take a long time before they do so. And it's a small percentage of them. If this
Yeah,
happens to you at a later stage in life, like, I don't know, let's say you're already retired and you wake up one day completely broke, you know, most folks will not come out of this. It's a psychological sledgehammer that is extremely difficult to deal with. And the darkness that follows, you know, um, a situation like this is not something I like to talk about, but it's something that I do not wish on anyone. I mean, there's
yeah,
the rates of suicides, the rates of when good people start doing bad things, that's when you realize you've been pushed to extremities that you've never thought you'd find yourself in, and you have to take measures to survive, and that's what you end up
yeah.
seeing. So yes, I
Yeah.
absolutely think this is eventually going to spread.
With Lebanon, and please excuse my ignorance. First thing I want to say is I'm so sorry that you and everyone in Lebanon had to go through that. It sounds horrific, from my privileged place here in Australia. Were there any telltale signs? Could you see that it was going to happen through hindsight, or everyone was just hoodwinked? They woke up, the next day and they just couldn't access their money, or well, not their money, their currency? Or were there things that people, if they were paying attention, probably could have worked out that it was about to happen?
Yeah, absolutely. In hindsight, everything's 2020. For many years in Lebanon, the banking system was touted as one of the pinnacles of the banking systems in the world. They were hailed as the banking system to follow, to clone. To they were leading by example, and what they were doing is that why people were investing so much in Lebanese banks is because they were offering incredibly high interest rates on the money. So, at one point on the Lebanese pound, I believe they were offering interest like 20 to 30% for many years. So if you had a lot of money and you just left it in a Lebanese bank at 20, 30%, you were making a killing, living, essentially for free. And that also started to manifest itself in US in bank accounts, with US dollars. So you would easily find yourself making anywhere between 5 to 9% on your money in USD in a Lebanese bank. So absolutely, it was incentivizing a lot of folks to put a considerable amount of their savings in such accounts. Why wouldn't you? So
Yeah.
but the way it was funded is, it was a Ponzi scheme. How would they pay these exorbitant interest rates? It's because new money was coming in and they were using that money
Yeah.
to pay off the interest of the money that was already in. And it kept going, like in all fairness, it kept going for like, I'd say 20 to 30 years. They were doing this and everybody was insanely happy. That's why nobody saw it coming. But at one
Yeah.
point, the money stopped coming in, or it slowed down considerably, that you started seeing, like cracks in the whole thing. The interest rates started to go down. They were locking you in. Now you couldn't take out your money. So if you were to put, for example, your funds in a bank account at whatever, like 7% interest rate, you couldn't touch it for a year, no matter what. So when you were
Yeah.
stuck in a bank account like this, everything blows up. You can't do anything. You're literally a sitting duck with your hands tied. And this is how people got hoodwinked. Like a lot of folks, they had their money in such accounts, and all of a sudden, boom, no access.
Yeah.
So, a horror story that happens in the movies, I don't think so, man. It happens in real life. It's going to continue happening as the Ponzi scheme falls apart. And as you can see, I mean, you just have to follow global news and and events to see how quickly this is starting to spread.
Yeah. So I guess something that's very topical at the moment, Javier Milei's just been elected president of Argentina. They're going through hyperinflation. Javier wants to dollarize. Obviously, it's still fiat currency. It's the strongest out of the bunch because it's the world reserve currency. Is that going to help these countries to go onto a dollar standard? Obviously, the Bitcoin standard is where they should end up, and we hope he does. But is that probably the best way forward from your point of view as a stepping stone into a Bitcoin standard, or should they just, because their money's not worth anything now? It's not like they can really buy that much Bitcoin with what it is. Can they get their economy a little bit better on track with the US dollar and then go into a Bitcoin standard? Or how do you sort of see that playing out in your thoughts on Javier and Argentina?
Yeah, of course. No, I absolutely think they're going to have to transition with the US dollar until they get to a Bitcoin standard. I mean, you have to keep in mind that in these countries, going to Bitcoin, the way folks at this end, in the West and in Europe go to Bitcoin are very different. A lot of these folks, they can barely make ends meet from a day to day. These folks need money to buy the basic essentials, food, and the quickest way to do it is not through Bitcoin. They're going to want to hold on to dollars because the dollars will pay the meals. So there's going to be a transition um, before we get to 100%, a Bitcoin standard. Even if he wanted, let's say he made it legal tender tomorrow in Argentina.
Yeah.
Most folks in Argentina have no idea what Bitcoin is, let alone transact in it. It's going to take some time before that spreads properly and people have a good grasp on how it works and they start accepting it in their businesses. But fundamentally, they still need to eat and drink and pay for their necessities, and that's not going to happen overnight in Bitcoin. So the US dollar is what a lot of folks are still after, because it's like the best one of the fiat currencies. They have the same situation in Lebanon. Even though Bitcoin is on a significant uptick in Lebanon, a lot of folks just can't use it simply because they can't go out and buy their meals with it yet, and they have families to feed. So it's not even a consideration for them. It's
Yeah.
an immediate need to pay for stuff, and for the moment, it's also the US dollar. Nobody's looking at anything else except for the US dollar. So I don't believe that that's going it's going to disappear anytime soon. But gradually it will become more insignificant as Bitcoin continues to spread and you start seeing more of it in different places, and eventually people will make the transition because it's the only form of real money that they can actually own, and that it appreciates in value.
Yeah, no, 100% agree. With obviously El Salvador had like Max Kaiser, Stacey Herbert, and they really worked with El Salvador to bring it onto a Bitcoin standard. Is that what we need? And any country around the world, obviously Argentina is probably the next likely in line, or does it just happen from the people, or there's individuals, say really big whales within Bitcoin that go there, and Javier Milei meets with Bukele and starts at the top, or is it going to start from the bottom, or is it going to be a bit of both? They meet in the middle. How do countries come onto a Bitcoin standard?
Well, Bitcoin is a bottoms up technology, right? I mean, it's Bitcoin's designed for the people, and the more people adopt it, they will force the top to comply. Now, if someone at the top already gets it, obviously that makes the whole process, much easier, it flows much smoother. And leaders like Nayib Bukele, I mean, those guys are extremely rare, and they should be cloned, everywhere. That's what a leader.
Yeah,
That's what a leader looks like. That's how a leader behaves. And someone who actually does what they're supposed to do is look out for their people and their country. And he has the courage and conviction not to play by these tyrannical rules. He has the courage to say no, even though he was attacked in the media. Even though they threatened him with all sorts of things, he didn't care. That's what a leader does. When you believe in something, you do whatever it takes to see it through. And his efforts paid off. El Salvador now is, in my opinion, on its way to becoming the new Monaco of the world. It went from being a place where no one would consider stepping foot there because of the gangs and the crimes, to somewhere where you see some of the highest net worth individuals packing their suitcase, without thinking, and moving there.
yeah,
Like the Max Kaisers of the world. You're going to see a lot more of them in El Salvador and in South America in general, because I have a feeling that area is going to be one of the first um, like parts of the world that are going to adopt Bitcoin. I mean, Argentina does it now. That's a massive thing. If Mexico
yeah,
follows, then that's an even bigger country. And once 2 or 3 places of like that do it, then the domino effect becomes much faster. And you lead by example. And I'm very
yeah.
optimistic on South America.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful place of the world as well. I can't wait to get over there and visit. I want to switch it up a bit. You've got a huge focus on privacy. You've founded a company, the Bitcoin Way. Just quickly before we get into that, just one thing I'd like to ask from the audience: if you are getting value from this video, hit the subscribe button, drop us a like. I've put all Tony's links below in the first part of the description. Greatly appreciated, and we will get back onto it. But Tony, here's your website, the Bitcoin Way. Take charge of your financial future. What is the Bitcoin Way? Why was it started? What are you doing to help people? Obviously, it's a Bitcoin focused company. You've got a massive expertise, cyber security background, huge focus on privacy and freedom. So I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, the Bitcoin Way was put together in order to fast track the onboarding of anyone into Bitcoin proper self-custody. At the end of the day, Bitcoin is technology, and it's something new that the world has not seen. And the number one issue that we hear from folks is that they're afraid of the tech. They're afraid of doing something that's they're going to screw it up somehow and potentially lead to a loss of funds. So they don't even bother. So what we do is that we handhold them through the entire process. You don't want to do the tech, you're not comfortable with it, that's okay. We will handhold you through the entire process. We will do the work. We will tell you exactly what steps need to be taken to take you from zero to airtight, in no time. We will make recommendations on the hardware you need to buy. You don't have to, worry about any of that stuff. We've streamlined the entire process. We are not financially incentivized to sell anything, by the way. I have to make that very clear. So all our recommendations with regards to hardware, software, and all that stuff come from our series of stringent testing that we put them through to see what's good, what's bad, what's ugly. And based on those results, we put out these recommendations. Folks can buy whatever they like. They come back to us. We set them up exactly the way it's supposed to be. Now, what sets us a bit apart from other folks in the industry is because we come from a very rich background in cybersecurity. We bring a lot of that knowledge into this setup. So we're not strictly following a manual as to how to set up a cold wallet and a node. We set them up, but we incorporate many elements around this that really airtights the entire final result much more than simply going through a manual. And we go like further out from the elements directly touching Bitcoin. We lock down networks, we lock down phones, we lock down computers if need be, because all of these parts, they interface with your Bitcoin. So you can't simply ignore them or assume that they're okay. They're not. And as the value of Bitcoin continues to appreciate, the attempts to steal it is going to rise along with it. And like I said, I don't believe it's going to happen in $5 wrench attacks because it's not efficient. They're going to manifest themselves with online attacks, whether it's phishing scams, whether it's things of that nature. So you need to be sure that everything about you online is as bulletproof as you're going to as you can possibly make it. And it's a process. So anything we do today is not something that you can set and forget for the next 50 years. It's not how it works. As with any technology, you have to keep up with it. So if in a few months, something new comes out that needs to be updated, upgraded, fine-tuned, we do it. So we offer these services to all our clients. We're on remote support. We're on standby essentially for everyone that we work with. And we keep them up to date with everything that's going on in the space, whether it's cybersecurity related, whether it's DNS related, whether it's specific to the hardware that they're using. If something better comes out down the line in terms of hardware wallets or nodes or what have you, we recommend upgrades. We take all these, proactive measures to make sure that this setup is something that is always relevant. And we always advise folks to treat it like something that you're going to protect with your life, because essentially this is going to protect your generational wealth. It's not the arena to take shortcuts with. It's not the arena to skimp on. And it's definitely not the arena to look for deals to save a few dollars on. This is something that you always want to make sure is the best that it can possibly be, because if it's not and something goes wrong, there's no customer support to refund the money that you've lost. So this is why it's critical that everyone approach this, with that mindset.
Yep. So one thing I want to say is, because I know everyone can get in contact with you, I think 30 minutes is free to be able to have a chat and stuff. Before people take that step, what's the number one thing people can do, maybe who are already in Bitcoin, to be able to start that privacy focused mindset with in regards to Bitcoin? So that's for people who are already in Bitcoin. And then people who have never heard about Bitcoin, what can they do before they even enter the space, before they jump on a call with you?
Well, just take time to study Bitcoin, to get a little bit more informed about it, and put away all the FUD that you have possibly heard. With regards to privacy, a lot of folks are afraid of it at this point because of, the years of narratives that have been pushed to lead you to believe that you're somehow doing something wrong if you're seeking privacy. That narrative must be completely destroyed because it's false. Everybody has a God-given right to their privacy. And it's no one's business to dictate, what you do, with your own personal life and especially with your own money, as long as you're not breaking any legitimate rules. And by
Yeah.
legitimate rules, I don't mean, those bullshit narratives that are being pushed on a whim by those, that want to remain relevant. I'm talking about
Yeah.
legitimate rules. And so people have to be reminded that, their seeking of privacy is not a bad thing. In fact, it's their right. It should be encouraged. Um, so knowledge around that space to remove, that fear with regards to privacy, I think that's number one. Once you get past that, then how to adopt proper, measures, tips, best tips and best practices, that's where we can add, tremendous value into ensuring, that you follow the proper steps, you don't skip any of them, and that you end up exactly where you want to go.
Yep. So, question on that: how long would it take you guys at the Bitcoin Way to take someone that's never, obviously they've heard about Bitcoin because they're talking to you, maybe they've read one book, but they don't own any Bitcoin, to being fully self-sovereign? What's that process look like as they go through, as you
Yeah,
take them
sure.
through that process?
Well, we break down the process. We don't do everything in one shot because it's very overwhelming. I mean, there's a lot to cover, a lot to detail. I mean, unless it's an individual like myself, most folks will not be able to go through, the whole process from beginning to end in one go. So we break it down in phases. We start off with a 30-minute conversation. It's free of charge to anyone, just to come and, have a chat, see where you're at, what you want to do. Do you own any Bitcoin? Just to get to know you more. Once that's done, then we start laying out the plan of action as to, where we're going to proceed. And generally that starts with a cold wallet. So we make a recommendation to get you started on a cold wallet. Our default setups are always air gapped. So, out of the box, the seed phrase never goes online. So we set that up properly. We advise on a many different options into how to safeguard your seed phrase, offline. Once that's done, we move to the Bitcoin node, which is something we push very heavily because even though it's optional, in our eyes, it's not optional. Every single Bitcoiner must absolutely be running their own node for the sake of their own sovereignty, privacy. It's a must. And then once that's done, we seal the whole thing together, and we can do anything we want at that point because the foundation is in place. So those that want inheritance planning, those that want to buy Bitcoin integrated into their businesses, we show them how to do it. If you want to buy KYC Bitcoin, we'll guide you through that process. If you want to learn how to buy no KYC Bitcoin, we'll also guide you through that process. You want to learn about how to protect your forward privacy with coin joining, we set up sessions and workshops with regards to that are specific to you. So we don't have any off-the-shelf consulting. All our conversations with folks are really personalized based on the individual, based on where they are from a technical perspective. Like we understand how they think, and we tailor the entire conversation based on that, so that at the end of it, I know that they fully grasp everything we've discussed, and they're able to deal with their Bitcoin as easily as a credit card. So all the individuals that we've worked with so far have been extremely happy with the end result because they've literally gone from knowing nothing to, receiving and sending Bitcoin as if they've done it their entire lives. And for us, that's a big win.
And how long's that process take there, Tony? Roughly.
Well, I mean, altogether, maybe like I don't know, like maybe anywhere between 6 hours, I'd say. If you want to lump it all together, it's 6 to 8 hours. Again, it depends on the individual. Some folks, I mean, they understand things fairly quickly, so things go fast. Other folks, they need more time. I mean, I've spent 6.5 hours with someone setting up a cold wallet.
Yeah,
Okay, I
well,
mean, it doesn't take 6.5 hours to set up a
yeah,
cold wallet, but that particular individual, has never really used the computer their entire life. This was an older
yeah.
individual. They were like maybe in their late 50s. And so this was really like landing from Mars onto their lap type of,
Yeah.
experience. So the cold wallet, 6.5 hours. But at the end of it, he was extremely grateful because
Yeah.
He was bragging afterwards that, oh, it's so easy, man. Tick, tick, tick. He was talking about it like he was doing it his entire life. But initially, I
Yeah.
sat down with him for 6.5 hours to get him there. So this is what we
Yeah.
do. This is why we create a safe space for everyone. There are no stupid questions at the Bitcoin way. Ask anything you like. It's fine. No one was born into this. It's everybody's going to learn it. We learn things every day. It's all good.
Yep. So talking about a question, hardcore Bitcoiners, when they hear the word collaborative custody, jump
Mhm.
away, turn the other direction, run away as quick as they can. Hardcore Bitcoiners don't like collaborative custody. They talk about collusion. They never want to give up their keys. How do you protect people, or how do you sell collaborative custody, or the benefits? How do you promote the benefits of collaborative custody and to reassure people that if they do choose to go through a collaborative custody model, there's no chance of any collusion and their funds are going to be safe?
Those concerns are 100% legitimate. I am, completely against collaborative custody in the sense where you have to trust third-party custodians, with keys, and you hope to God that, nothing goes wrong and they don't collude and all that stuff. I'm completely against this. I've always been against this, pushing self-custody, 1,000,000%. That's my preferred way. The reason why we started offering privacy-focused collaborative custody is because we're doing it slightly different. To begin with, we're not a financial institution. Okay, so off the bat, we don't require any KYC information. We're not selling any Bitcoin. We're not buying any Bitcoin. We don't deal with any of that stuff. We're really an IT company doing consulting services in the Bitcoin space. So our privacy focused collaborative custody ensures that that model is intact. All we are is we're like a backup key to one of your keys. We can't do anything
Yep.
with it by design. By design, we cannot do anything with it. So if you're doing a 2 out of 3 multi-sig, which is essentially what the collaborative custody does, is that it upgrades your setup from a single sig to a multi-sig. You can do 2 out of 3, 3 out of 5, whatever you like. But essentially, we hold a backup key. That's it. It's just held. But the control with regards to sending and withdrawing is always at the individual level. We can't do anything with that key. Okay. And we don't sign anything because we don't know anything about you. We never sign transactions. If you
Yep.
lose one of your keys, we will send you with a self key recovery procedure that you will follow. Bring back your key so that you have both keys in your possession, and then you do whatever you like. So we're essentially like, you can think of us as like sort of recovering a file off a Google Drive type of thing. So that's
Yep.
how, we protect ourselves and we protect the individual. Obviously, with some of our plans, there's some very advanced security features also that we can implement. But again, the control is always in the individual. On the individual side, we cannot do anything by design. So that's what sets us apart. And another big thing that sets us apart is our fee structure with regards to collaborative custody. We don't do any of that percentage-based nonsense. We believe that every Bitcoiner is supposed to keep more of their money, because as the value of Bitcoin goes up, that percentage that you're paying, for that collaborative custody is going to go up with it.
Yep.
We don't believe in this. Our fees are fixed, they're set, they're transparent, and everything is laid out for you. There's no surprises.
Yep. With that fee, they're just talking about that. Is that an ongoing fee, or it's a one-off fee? Like, is it like a monthly reoccurring, or you pay
No, it's a
yearly,
year.
or?
It's a year. Yeah, it's a yearly fee. It's a yearly fee,
Yep.
and for that fee, we make sure that everything about you stays up to date. If there's something that needs to be done, obviously we contact you. We're always, in touch on that front, and the whole thing is continuously fine-tuned as things progress. So you don't have to worry about any of this stuff. We have everything streamlined at our end. We know exactly who's on board with what plan, where to contact them, and how to reach them.
Yeah. You're also putting out like a lot of information, especially short form content on your on the Bitcoin Way Twitter is where I see it. They sort of look like YouTube shorts. I believe you've got a YouTube channel as well. I've linked your links below as well as this website. But what are some things that you'd like people to take away from this conversation? Obviously, it's very high level. We did start talking about the number go up, each Bitcoin being worth billions of dollars potentially per coin. But I believe, Tony, for you, it's worth a lot more than just the fiat, the dirty fiat value. Bitcoin's a whole lot more. But what are the takeaways you'd like people to be able to understand from your perspective?
I'd like people to understand what Bitcoin was really created for. Bitcoin represents freedom in the sense, that without this, we are headed into a world where everything about your life is going to be severely constricted and managed by folks that do not have your best interest in mind. And Bitcoin is the only chance, people have to opt out of this insanity. Before Bitcoin, we didn't really have options. I'm thankful that Satoshi Nakamoto put this out into the world, because the way we're going, had we not had this exit, I really don't know what kind of future we would be living in. And traditional safe havens like gold and real estate that, some of the older generations still seem to be hiding behind, those are not safe anymore, at least in my view. Like gold is heavily manipulated. Real estate, you cannot protect any of your real estate unless you have an army behind you. Obviously, if you get coerced by folks that are going to come up to you with guns, you're not going to protect them by a piece of paper that has your name on it. So they're going to take it away from you. So the 12 or 25 word innovation has literally shattered the entire legacy system, because you save it in your head, you can go anywhere, and you have access to your money that nobody can take away from you, nobody can use against you, and will give you the life that you deserve, the free life that you deserve for you and your family. And I urge folks to stop looking at Bitcoin as a get rich scheme. It's not. The price go up is going to happen regardless. But fundamentally, Bitcoin was, created to preserve your God-given right to live free, because without money, you have nothing. If you have to depend on someone to eat and drink, you're like, you're their donkey. So either you take the time to understand this and study Bitcoin and learn why it's so valuable regardless of its price, or you do nothing and you hope that everything I'm saying and everything all other Bitcoiners are saying is just nonsense. But if it's not, and I know it's not, but if it's not, you're going to find yourself stuck in a world of central bank digital currencies where every single thing about you is owned by a government. Some folks may be okay with this. A lot more folks, I suspect, will not be okay with this.
Not me.
Okay? So, yeah, anyone with any form of self-dignity, value, respect for themselves will absolutely fight this and be against it in every way, shape, or form. So this is what I'm hoping more folks will pay attention to. And ironically, it's the higher net worth individuals that need more convincing, because they're essentially living such a comfortable life. Everything is practically free, depending on how high you are on that echelon of fiat money, that you don't take anything else seriously. You think you're untouchable. And if you're living somewhere where you're still going out buying your cars, having your restaurant outings and your parties and all that, well, there's no urgency, in your ecosystem. But there was no urgency in anyone's ecosystem in Lebanon, in Argentina, in Venezuela either. And then, one day, just like that, it all disappeared. So if you think you're living in such a place, you are committing financial suicide, in my opinion. It's not a question of if, it's just a question of when. And there's no amount of fiat money that you can own that will protect you against its immediate drop to zero, or the immediate cutoff between you and those funds. That's what I'm hoping more people will pay attention to.
No, I absolutely love it. One question that I ask every guest is, do you have a book, it can be Bitcoin related or not, that you'd recommend everyone read?
Yeah, I mean, Saifedean's The Bitcoin Standard, and one of my other personal favorites is The Price of Tomorrow by Jeff Booth. Jeff
Yeah.
Booth has been an incredible influence in my life. I mean, I read everything he puts out. Um, wow, he's been like a very big factor in my orange pilling journey, just to deepen my understanding beyond the tech. Like, I mean, just to understand it, on a deeper level. And there was also Andreas Antonopoulos. I mean, I
Yeah.
discovered him. He was the first one I discovered, and he really brought my attention to the entire Bitcoin space. But if you really want to get like a good, get off zero type of education, I'd say Andreas Antonopoulos, Saifedean, Jeff Booth for sure. I mean, there's a lot more out there, but just to get going, I mean, those three alone will really solidify the narrative for you.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I'll link all those books below. I'm a massive reader. I've got all those books in the background there. And
Yeah.
Bitcoin Evangelism is another good one. There's so many out there. It's been an absolute pleasure, Tony. We'll have you back on very shortly. For everyone watching, enjoy the video that comes up next. Be blessed. Peace.
Thank you, man. Great to be here.